there. First one I'll talk about is Corey Dailey from Signees High School outside of San Antonio. Place I've never heard of, before we started recruiting it. A kid that we just kind of found that, we're like, dang, where is that at, right? I'm talking to Coach Bernowski, who's a Texas guy, and he's like, somewhere near San Antonio. So, had to fly in and drive kind of out in the middle of nowhere to go see him. But, I think Corey, man, has a huge ceiling, man. You're talking about a kid who, he's been a 4-year starter. He has every single passing game record at the high school. Plays for his dad, so he's a coach's son who's one of the best offensive coaches in Texas. But what really makes Corey special is that he's a winner in everything he does. He was all-district MVP in football. He was all-district MVP in basketball, and he was all-district MVP in baseball. So that's one thing I love about Corey is that he's not just a football guy. He's got raw, natural talent that you can't teach. For such a big, long guy who's 6'6", he's got 11-inch hands. He's got great arm angles from baseball, but also he has great poise and playmaking ability for his size. You don't see many guys his size that can make the plays that he can make outside the pocket and extend plays. And I think that's from his basketball background, just being a shooting guard at 6'6". He's not a big post player playing in the paint. So I love that about him. And obviously, like I said, man, I just think he has a high ceiling. He loves football. Like I say, he's a coach's son, and he's a kid that, the ball was always in his hands in high school, right? Like, he's a kid that, his dad let him throw it, and if they didn't play really well on offense, they didn't have a chance to win the game. And so you want a kid like that that's not scared to be that type of guy, to be the leader, to face adversity, and that's what makes, Corey, I think, really special. Obviously, he's a kid that, like I said, wasn't very highly recruited, a late bloomer, starting to grow into his body. And now he's the 13th ranked quarterback in the country, right? So, I think he's going to be a special player, and I can't wait to get him here for January, because I really believe the biggest development in quarterbacks are freshman to sophomore year, right? That's to me the biggest development, and the more reps they get, the better they're going to be. The second guy that we got obviously 2 quarterbacks from the state of Texas. Is Angelo Renda. Angelo was a guy that we found, man. Plays at a great school, South Lake Carroll, who's not just one of the best teams in Texas. They're one of the best teams in the country. Head coach there is Riley Dodge, who dad's a big-time Texas high school coach. He was a quarterback also. He's probably one of the best offensive coaches in high school in the country. And they've just done a great job there with their system. Angelo's a kid that grew up in the same system from middle school to high school. And he's a kid that even when he was young, he was always one of the best players on his team. And he's another just productive kid. You're talking about a kid that had, in the last 2 years had over 80-something touchdown passes, over 20-something rushing touchdowns. He's a dual threat playmaker. And, and the one thing I love about him is just how consistent he's been as a quarterback. You're talking about a kid who's only lost, one game as a starter. He's 28-1 as a starter, lost in the state championship last year. And right now they're basically a game away from playing for another state championship. So, the one thing I love about Renda is that he's a winner, right? And obviously the completion percentage is huge for me. The last 2 years he's been over 70%. So he's a very efficient player, and he knows where to go with the ball. And you can just tell that he loves the game. He studies the game. All he does is watch and talk football. And those two are, to me, to play in this position at a high level at Power 4, you got to have guys that have been productive, that are used to having the ball in their hands, and guys that love the game. Because to be great, man, everybody's talented. You got to have guys that stay in here and work their butts off, that watch film, and that want to, be the best they can be. So I'm super excited about him too. Anybody got any questions?
Okay, just how do these 2 quarterbacks of yours compare and contrast in terms of their skill sets? And when you have one guy who's 6'6", and one that's 6 flat, just how does that maybe affect just what they can do just based on their frames?
Yeah, for me, man, I never want to recruit the same guys. I think if you say that, hey, you want your quarterback room to all look the same, I think you can get yourself in a lot of trouble. I want my guys to all be different. And I don't care, how tall they are, or if they are really tall like Corey. Their skill set has to be what we're looking for, right? And obviously, Corey's a guy, like I said, who's who's super long, who's going to be a 230 to 240 pound kid. But he's not just a pocket player. You see a guy who can make people miss in the pocket, can extend plays outside the pocket. He has the ability to take over a game and do more than just throw it from the pocket. And then obviously, like I said, Renda's a guy who he can do stuff in the quarterback run game. He's a track kid. He gets the ball in his hands. He plays in rhythm. So for me, man, it's more of a skill set of, hey, are they accurate? Can they run the show, right? Like when the ball is put in their hands in game film, can they go win games? And then do they have that toughness, that grit of competing, right? And to me, I love that they're different because, it's fun to have different guys in the room and play to their strengths and obviously develop their weaknesses.
If I'd asked you a year ago, December 3rd, 2024, would you have said you intended to take 2 quarterbacks in this class, or did that kind of develop once you found Corey?
If you want to be honest with you, man, I'm always trying to take as many quarterbacks as I can get. If you want to win a championship, at any level, man, quarterback is the livelihood of the team, man, of the program. You got to have a quarterback to win a championship. The players got to believe in the quarterback. The coaches got to believe in the quarterback. Everybody's got to believe in the quarterback. So, you don't want a roster where you got one quarterback and the 2 or 3 other 4 guys, they're not very good or they can't play. Why not have a room full of 3 or 4 quarterbacks that can all win you a championship, right? And you can't be scared to find guys. When it comes down to it, some kids don't want to be to have 2 quarterbacks in the class, right? I don't like those kids, being brutally honest with you. If you're a kid that is scared of competition, if you're scared to come to Pitt and compete, well then, hey, you're not going to make it here or in the NFL one day if you're scared of competition. And that's what was so exciting about both these kids is they didn't care how many quarterbacks we were taking at Pitt. They just wanted to come play in the system and come build what we're building here and compete. And when it comes down to it, we're going to play the best player here. We always have. And who gets the best chance to win.
You've talked in the past about you like to get your quarterbacks a lot of reps so you can see exactly what you have. Has it become any more challenging with having 2 freshman quarterbacks coming in at the same time?
Not really. I think spring ball, we've done a great job here of getting our young guys developed in reps. You see that by having multiple true freshmen on offense and defense and special teams playing this year. We find ways to get reps. I'm all about developing. Like I said, I really believe the biggest part of college football is for a quarterback is how fast can you develop from your freshman and sophomore year. And it's our job to get those guys to reps. It's our job to coach them and to be hard on them and to try to maximize their ability as fast as humanly possible, right? Because we need to know in a year, hey, is this guy going to be that guy, right? Is he going to be the guy who can run the show and be the face of a franchise, basically, right? And so, that's a big part of it. And them coming in spring is huge. They're going to come in. In January, they're going to start learning the system. They're going to go through spring ball and go through more, 12 installs and come back in the summer and go through another 12 installs and then come in camp and go through them again. And, that just puts you so much farther ahead coming in early in college. And that's a good thing for quarterbacks.
For the past couple of months, how have you maybe seen Angelo and Corey's relationship between themselves sort of develop, especially being Texas guys?
Yeah, I think, obviously 2 Texas guys. The good thing I love about both of them is that they're good kids, man. They've been raised the right way. They understand what it means to compete, and they both believe in themselves. You want guys that believe in their ability and believe that they're the best. And it's a healthy competition. I think that's what's great. And you want to have that. And the great thing of both of them is neither of them back down. They both feel like they're great players, and we believe they are. And the more great players we can have on the roster, the better everybody's going to get. They're going to make each other better. And I think that's the good thing here.
I guess we look at Angelo, maybe some programs might overlook him because of his height, but obviously he's a shorter quarterback yourself. What do you like just from his skill set outside of just being, a runner and just, being a part of a great team that is South Lake Carroll?
Yeah, I think obviously, like you said, winning, right? Efficiency. As a junior, he had 40-something touchdown passes, almost 12 rushing touchdowns. You're talking about a guy who's super efficient, who's played big in big games, playoff games. He carried them last year through the playoffs. You got to love that, man, because, there's going to be pressure at this level, and there's going to be a lot of people that rely on you to get the job done. And to play on a great team, a team that has a lot of great players around him, he knows how to get guys the ball. And we're going to have great players here, and we need a guy that can be that point guard. That's who he is. He's that point guard. He's that leader. He's the guy that runs the show, and you want players like that.
Anything about him?